back at it. How's it going, Neal? Yeah, get the people amped up.
Get the people going.
I wanted to start before we get into it.
Yep.
Your assistant gave us some feedback on this show.
She did.
What was it? We're getting feedback now.
We
It
got-
was some of the best feedback we've gotten.
She said, it's actually interesting.
It's actually, I think, listenable.
Listenable might have been the term that got used.
I got some feedback as well from my 9-year-old son who stumbled upon it on YouTube.
Oh, no.
Did I tell you this?
No.
No, he's like, Dad, I saw you on YouTube. I think because, whatever my search history.
Same
was in there,
Wi-Fi.
or something like that. And his remark was that I looked like I didn't know the answer to the question. And he was very concerned for me. He said that he wasn't worried about me embarrassing him. He's like, Dad, I just don't want you to embarrass yourself on YouTube or on TV. And I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy. I'll work on that.
Respect. At least
Yeah.
he's got your back. That's good.
Totally, man. He's a very thoughtful guy. But
So-
anyway.
Today you know all the answers.
Today I know all the answers. I actually told him, like, man, well, I'm kind of the one like asking the answers, so it's not good if I'm stumped on the spot. But I was just choosing my words carefully, is what I told him.
So I like that response.
Yeah,
That's
but
good.
the feedback's rolling in.
The feedback. We had one from YouTube too, and I think it was XJHYSK or something like that.
Yeah.
A link to a scam.
Oh, sweet.
Even better.
Yeah.
Once you get out
Cross promotion.
exactly. Once you get out the scammers, you explode.
Yeah. A bot. First person to respond. Support gets $5,000. Yeah. What's new? What's going on? What have you been up to?
Not much. Pretty good week for me. Actually, not the best week for me. So I lied. That's like my generic
walk that
answer. It's like,
back,
yeah,
yeah.
things are great. Everything's awesome. No, so my property manager, who's on with me full time,
Yeah.
he decided that he's able to take vacation. Apparently, I
How-
think I may have
How
approved
dare
it.
he?
Yeah. So in the middle of summer, anyway, so he took the week off, and it actually wasn't a bad week. I'm not gonna lie, there wasn't anything too crazy. I think the biggest thing was we had two mold scares, both in basements, both like on the baseboard.
Mm-hmm.
One tenant handled it better than the other. One was like, "Hey, I have mold," and the other was like, "I need to go into a hotel today until this is fixed." Which I'm sure you've had that.
I've had people raise concerns about surface mold before, and I'm like, oh man, it's the same stuff that's in your shower. Like it's not an issue. It just needs to be wiped down. Like literally, you could physically wipe it off. But it is an issue sometimes in basement apartments. It's hard to get around, especially if you don't have good air circulation.
Yeah.
And it's been really humid lately. People tend to, in small basement apartments, put furniture up against a wall, and then all of a sudden it's really not breathing. It's not really a concern.
Yeah.
It can be taken care of pretty easily, but
These old
Yeah.
buildings too, they don't have the air exchangers and stuff in them.
no. And then you go in and you renovate, and then you put brand new windows in, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
you
airtight.
tighten up the building, and you're below grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of them was fortunate. It was actually just a leaky water line. That must have got punctured when they were throwing on the trim.
Oh, okay.
So we popped
I've
that
had
off.
That happen.
Plumber was really nice, came back, fixed it right there on the spot. We sealed everything back up. The other one, I think, is an exterior water intrusion.
Oh, okay. So this isn't just surface condensation. You really let me take that for a walk before
Yeah,
correcting me
yeah.
that you had a leak in your building.
Well, it may be. And to be honest, it was kind of funny when you said that because when she brought me in to show me, there was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, you got to look closer. And so like my face was like this far from the baseboard. I'm like, I'm not seeing it. Like my eyes are pretty decent. But anyways, we're still going to look into it and open some stuff up.
I've had that same thing happen before where someone with a finish nail put it through a piece of trim, and the finish nail plugged the hole it created, and then over time rusted away. Right? So it
yes.
actually took a little while for it to happen. But yeah, I did kind of go on a tangent there that sometimes you will get surface mold in these places purely because of a lack of air movement. But obviously, water intrusion is a bigger concern because then it can get behind the wall and it's not surface anymore. But yeah, I had a similar situation. I went away. I don't have a property manager, so kudos to you for having one. I have a live-in super at my 15 unit. I've got a guy at my 12 unit who's does some stuff for me, and it's kind of a piecemeal situation. But I was away for a few days, and I was barely out of my driveway before I got a call about a hot water tank not working, which I'm always concerned more about the hot water tank leaking. And
Yeah,
usually,
they
or
make a
oftentimes they go one and the same. And what people don't realize is even a 40-gallon hot water tank it doesn't drop 40 gallons on your floor because it just continually fills. So it continues to run and drain until the city runs out of water. So fortunately, really good tenant. She knew how to turn off the water to it.
Oh, nice.
You know, not that it's especially hard, but you know, there's the shutoff valve at the top. And then another tenant, broken fridge, man, brand new fridge. You know, he's the first person ever to use it.
New appliances suck.
New appliances do suck, and people ask all the time, you know, what's the trickiest part about being a landlord? What's the biggest headache? Appliances.
Samsung appliances.
Oh my gosh! At first, let's be
that?
easy on the folks at Samsung.
Yeah,
I'm still open to sponsorships here.
Yeah, can I say that?
But I used to try to get like used secondhand or scratch a dent, and then like it's not worth it. I need a long warranty, but still, and it's tricky because I'm very fortunate. My father is very handy, and he can fix almost anything. So, you know, right away he was over there. But once it's a condenser, you know, it's under warranty. But actually, I need to know if you got a good appliance guy. They only have one company that does that services their warranties though, and they're available on the 20th.
I got the guy.
Yeah, but like, is it under warranty? At this point, I can't even worry about the warranty. I just got to get it fixed. But
I was say warranty and fixes. Yeah. You're kind of hooped. Like every time I get it fixed, it's like it's $400, or I can just get a new one for $600. I know it's stupid though because it's a warranty repair.
Yeah,
but
and it's a brand new unit, man. Like he's maybe been in there 3 months, and the fan in the freezer will not spin and push the air through. So, but I thought it was interesting because this is one of the big questions that we often get asked is, well, you know, what's going to happen though if I'm away and a call? Like, how do you handle this and blah blah blah, and one of the fortunate things is when you reach a certain scale and have a certain amount of experience, you kind of have, you know, nothing surprises you. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no big deal. Your hot water tank is, it was good that she knew how to shut it off because otherwise I'd have to walk her through shutting it off.
Yeah.
But I've got a plumber who now he's worked with me for years and years and years. Yeah. And he was there right away to fix it.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I'm fortunate to have my dad who's quite handy, so he could at least go and troubleshoot it. And he went there, he diagnosed it. He said this might work, but probably not. You know, but he got it going short term and it didn't last. And I was away and he just went through my supplier and got everything in motion. But that is the reality of being a landlord. You leave town and an appliance goes, and then I was away and got a bunch of call from a new tenant, well, an inherited tenant from a building that I just recently purchased, and that's a story for another day. But yeah, the joys of landlording, man. This is what it's all about.
That's all the fun.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll mention that came up this week, which was actually, I'd say, the most frustrating part of the week. Everything else, like you said, I have systems in place. It's not the end of the world. You deal with them, right? The plumber came and fixed it. Was I have a variance application in for a property. It's been in for 8 months. As we know, the city's not quick to get through things. Mm-hmm. They have finally gotten to it. Now, my lot is very small, like 25 or 30 feet wide, and I'm sandwiched between 2 apartment buildings. But I have apartment building zoning.
This down the south end?
Yes.
Yeah, another one.
And so anyways, I made an application on that, and I was like, this is clever. Like, I can't get in for the front for parking. So I made an agreement with my neighbor behind me who has a parking lot up against the back of my lot. They'll give me an easement through. I'll put a garage underneath the building. And the grade's perfect. You drive right in.
Wow, they gave you that easement? That's a nice neighbor.
He was game to do it. I just said I have to repave his parking lot. He's not just being like, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
I'm throwing down a new parking lot for him. But anyways, I thought I was like, genius, let's go. City comes back. Because he has lower zoning than I do, you can't go from a lower zone.
Oh, that's true.
To a higher zone.
Yeah, you cannot.
And then it's so infuriating because I'm like, I have 25 feet. So I have to come in from the front. How? So I'm just going to shave off 15 feet of this building to make a pathway. So I have a 10-foot wide building now? I'm not, I'm drawing a blank on how. And they're like, and we can't not let you not put parking. Like, you have to put parking. And at the same time,
Why do you have to put parking?
This is the thing. I'm like, you guys are cutting out lanes. You're pushing on public transit. I have a bus stop in front of my building. I have Sobeys here, Superstore there. I'm like, I have a 99 walk score. When you do the walk thingy, walk score 99, like, you have to have parking. And I'm like,
that's where your solution is. That's what you got to look at. Not this easement, not this whatever is getting rid of the parking. That's very strange to me. I'm going to give a shout out to planners here for a second. I don't know if you know any good planners. I know some that are amazing.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about, the reason I had heard of this before is I've got a corner lot that I was just going through the motions on Okay, here's what it's going to be designated in the new center plan. Here's what I can do with that. But I've got some abutting lots, and maybe I should look at those and think on it. And I consulted a friend, client, planner that I know, and one of the things they mentioned was that, hey, just so you know, the lots beside you, even though they're completely unusable because there's an easement that go through it, I was going to just use it as a driveway / parking.
Yep.
It had a different zoning. And I was going to have this same issue that I was not going to be able to pass through that to get to my main lot. And totally unbeknownst to me. And when they were drawing out the little map of the center plan, no one thought to look into the rationality of that use and one abutting the other. So as part of the application for adjustments, I did that and I successfully got it because it made sense.
Yeah.
Right. And thankfully, this person caught that for me. And then the city completely kind of messed up the other stuff. I was like, hey, on my one over here that's allowing 20 meters, I would like to move it to 26. And the one over here that's allowing 14, I would like to change it to 20. And they kind of, in their response, like, hey, we reviewed the following issues and here are the responses. It's a big published list.
Yeah.
They were like, we're going to keep it there at 20, and we're going to keep this at 14. And they switched them accidentally. So they referenced one as staying the same at 20, but it was the one that was only 14. But then the one that I was trying to go for 26, like, no, we're going to keep it the same at 14. I'm like, no, it was 20 before. And so now I'm having to go back through the process on like here's our first list. Here's our desired changes, applications. And then now here's the corrections relating to the changes. So, I mean, I can't even imagine the workload that they get dumped on their desk, but it shows the strength. You need a planner to look at that site and be like, how do we get no parking here? Because this is dumb. At some point, rationality prevails. I do believe that. You can't have parking there. That's
no,
crazy.
Exactly. And I think the two things, and I don't, I don't discredit them. I don't have beef with the planners in specific, but I think there is just the length of time to get to rationality, I think, is the part that's frustrating. But I think the biggest problem in my end is I went through the variance versus the development application. Mm-hmm. And so through the variance, you're not really allowed to play with those things, technically. Mm-hmm. I'd have to go through a full-on development application, which pushes me back another 2 years, which is disappointing. But anyway, so that was the little cap to my week.
Yeah.
Piece de resistance.
Right on.
Literal resistance.
Cool. All right, well, so what are we talking about today? Let's dive into it.
Our first rentals, because just in case somebody actually cares about how we got into this game.
Yeah, no, I think it's relevant.
The process of acquiring, the process of having it, and in my case, I have now sold it.
Yeah.
At a very, very, very thin profit. But yeah, just that story.
Okay.
So,
well, start us off.
Yeah.
So you're going to start with that, and then I'll start with when I kind of bought my first. What I kind of call them true multis. What do you call it when it's no longer a 4-unit, a 3-unit, a 2-unit?
I say real multi as well.
Real multi?
I say it's an actual multi-unit.
Yeah, I kind of look at it at the threshold being 6 units because then you have to go for commercial financing.
Yeah.
Right. I think some lenders are still doing 5 residential. Are they? Maybe
5. Yeah.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. They'll do 5.
So true multis. If I throw that term around and people don't know what I'm saying, I mean like 6 units and above. But
6 plus.
Yeah. So tell me. I think I know a little bit about this first property, but tell me about your first property.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a bit. I think we have a picture of it here. It's a ultra ugly home. Ultra ugly. Look at that thing.
Just to be clear here, this is the after picture, folks.
Yeah. This is when I sold it. Actually.
No, that's a cute home, man. Come on.
It was uglier when I got it. Are you kidding me? Look at the siding. Multiple colors. There's some vertical on the front, on the top, above the window. There's some horizontal below the window.
That's business
it's
in
yellow.
the front, party in the back on this house.
You can see the double roof line in the back where the extension is.
Yeah.
And then the aftermarket dormer that was put on there.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy. She's rough.
Well, it only lasted 11 days on the market. So, I mean, I looked at that when the price came up. I'm like, oh, that's a great deal.
It was.
And Tanner was like, well, it was 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, well, that kind of explains it a little bit too, or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Market shifted. I mean, those people are laughing now. Like, we joke about it, but man, good luck getting that location, that amount of house.
It's a big house. It's a 6-bedroom, 3-bath home. Like, it's enormous. It's on Chebucto Road. It is worth a heck of a lot more than they paid.
Yeah.
But I had to sell it due to circumstance.
You and the Broskis had a falling out.
Me and the Broskis had a falling out. We had we went multiple offer though. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a home that I bought as a partnership to get me started. I remember I said I had no income when we bought this place, so I couldn't get financing. And so that's how we ended up with this one. But yeah, anyways, partnerships are tough. They're always tough. And we ultimately had to sell it. Again, we made some money, so and I learned a lot. Like, that's what got me in the game. So it was great.
Yeah, you only learn by doing.
Yeah.
And, flashing back, doing this, all right, let's talk about back when we started. That's the most informative stuff to reference for people who are maybe listening to this.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I'd say I learn more on this than I do on these ones I do now. Like, I'll flip over a 6 unit. I don't really learn that much in the process. It's more of like a recycling thing. This one, like, everything was like everything was moments of like, oh. But yeah, so I'll give you a quick rundown. So this one was 2016, 2015, I think I bought it. And we had been shopping for a while. We went through the whole process of, like, we started in the city, but we couldn't get any of the good locations because our budget was like $300K for like a true not necessarily a true multi-unit 6+. Watch my terminology. Now that we just defined a term.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just like we were looking for like a 2 or 3 unit, and we couldn't get anything great. So then we started looking outside towns like Truro and bombing all around. Actually, Nass was our agent. Poor guy. I took him to like 100 houses, Truro, the whole works. Anyways, this popped up one day, and I was like, we have to see this. Like, it came up for $274. Had to go see it. I was like, we need to get there today. We ended up, it came up for $289. I lied to you. It came up for $289, but I was like, on the peninsula on Shabukdo Road with this many bedrooms and bathrooms, and I think I see 2 kitchens. Like, I need to see this house.
Yeah. So tell me about the layout.
Yeah, so we got there, we ran over, and it's an enormous house. So when you come in, this is the front door. You come in, on your right, there's like a big office, but it's probably 15 by 10. That's it there. And then on the other side is this one here. So this is then like the dining room, family room. Same thing, like 15 by 10, maybe even longer. You can tell it's quite long. And then you go into the kitchen. Big, long kitchen, eating kitchen in the back. And then there's a stackable laundry there at the end in that little room. Yeah.
So was this the layout when you bought it?
This is the layout when I bought it. Yeah, we didn't do any work to it. So that's their back entrance. Now, this is where I was seeing, in my eyes, I was like, ooh, moneymaker. Upstairs is what you get, but then downstairs there's a 2-bedroom. So we're now going downstairs. That's okay. The pictures are not in order at all, but that downstairs was 2 more bedrooms, a full bathroom, and another mini kitchen.
And this was like what we call now like a guest suite. This wasn't a legal second unit.
So this is the thing. It was not a legal unit. So not a lot of people were interested in it. To add to it, the house had been resold. If you bring up that listing history for a second, Tanner.
Yeah, it's a long history.
And so that person had, it just continuously has been kind of in and off market. Like, it's not.
Wow.
And they had bought it for $274.
So this is the thing. We think about the market now as just this perpetual rocket ship to the moon.
Yeah.
What a short memory we have. Look at this beautiful history. 7
years.
2009, it couldn't sell, and then it couldn't sell again. And then someone bought it finally in 2009 for $274.
90 days on market.
Yeah. After being 236 days, followed by 207 days, followed by 94 days.
Yeah.
And then, 2
years.
The house no one would buy. Neal comes along and buys it. No, like...
It's true. It's true.
It sells. Yeah. And then, in fairness, 3 years later, you didn't make a killing on it.
No.
Right? Like,
and it did it all again.
Down and, it was... I often think back and go, oh gosh, we were so fortunate to get in when we did. There's some negatives about back then because it was hard to move homes. And if you had to sell in a situation, right, like whatever situation happened with the partners or whenever it goes sideways, it's not that easy to just pull the chute and sell.
No. And so, that was that. Exactly. That was when you were buying, then I found it was a lot more stressful. Right now, I feel like everyone's so like comfortable to buy because you're like, whatever. And like 2 years I'll sell for like $30,000. Doesn't matter what I do. Then when you're making the decision, it was so stressful because you're like, there's a chance that I get this and I sit on it for 10 years and I can't even sell it for what I paid.
Yeah.
Like, that was a huge concern.
Yeah.
Appraisals didn't come in high and exciting. Like, now you get an appraisal and they come in more than what you're expecting. Like,
so what was your game plan going into this? Like, what was your big vision of, obviously you needed to do it because you didn't have the equity, so you needed the partnership.
Yeah.
And you guys lived there?
No.
Okay. So you just ran it as a rental from day one?
Yeah, we bought it as a threesome. We put down 20%, each putting in basically 7% each. And it also had a detached garage in the back. And the plan was to rent it out. Rent out the upstairs for $1,800 and rent the basement for $1,000. And then we had to pay utilities because nothing was separated. But it was a new high-efficiency propane burner in there. So like we had the bills and it wasn't that bad. And you know what? Honestly, it worked out good at first. So we got it. And we rented it out for $1,800 upstairs, $1,100 downstairs. The biggest problem was the basement had 7-foot ceilings.
Right.
So it felt like a dungeon.
Yeah.
Which I've now have like PTSD that I'm like, anytime I go into a low basement, I'm like, I'm not buying this place. I won't do it.
Also, that house is of the vintage in that neighborhood where the basements weren't really intended to be finished to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they're damper, they're
levels are
darker,
low.
like the windows are low, and one of the challenges is when that's the product you're providing and the rent you're charging. Sometimes there's more management, right? Or more turnover and things like that.
Yeah.
How'd it work out?
So first year, rented the upstairs to a group of young guys. They were great. And I think an older lady, no, actually another young guy in the basement. Everything was all good. There was lots of parking space, big lot. And we actually rented the garage for like another $100 a month or something. Anyways, first year went by good. And then about maybe 14, 15 months into it, that group of guys upstairs, there's 4 of them. 1 or 2 of them fell off and then they filled the bedroom, couldn't fill it. So it got to the point where they started needing like, we'll get you a little bit, like in a week, we'll get you another $600.
Yep.
And it got to that point, so they were just like, we're leaving. And I was like, okay, like it makes sense. You guys can't pay this anymore. Our rental market at that time was not super exciting.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was good.
Yeah.
And if you had decent product, it filled. But it wasn't like you put up and you just instantly got it filled. So when they left, we put it up. But it was like slow trickling responses, especially at $1,800 in Halifax.
Yeah, at the time, man, that was nuts. That essentially limits you to renting by the room. At that point in time, you have to have 4 guys who can go in there and rationalize, and be like, "Oh man, we only have to pay $425 each or $450 each."
Yeah,
but it's hard as a young couple that might be a better fit. They're gonna be like, "Well, we don't need these 2 extra rooms."
Yeah.
This is why when people ask me about rentals, I love 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom plus den.
Yeah,
I love it. You get young individuals, single people or young couples. As soon as you get into more than that, you kind of get roommates or kids. And I love kids. But they make a mess. And roommates break up. One of them gets a new partner. They move out, like different life plans. So I find 2 bedrooms is sweet, man. Young couple, they want a home office.
So we had 4 bedrooms, and when you have the roommate set up, it's like having 4 separate tenants. It's the management of 4 units with the income of 1.
Oh, and they're arguing. And then like, we got a new person. Kevin moved out. We got this new guy. It's like, where'd you get him? It's like,
Sending
Kijiji. Like, they just find like some random person who's
Yeah.
now e-transferring money. And then they have a follow with him. I had a similar scenario with a single family home I rented with its 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And, it was like a revolving door of these like young girls who like 2 of them were kind of staples. And then the third, they must have gone through 3 different roommates as the third person.
Yeah. That was what was happening with those guys. Again, they were pretty good about it because one of them was like the leader, and he was actually saying the rent as a whole,
Right.
which was the dream.
Yeah.
But anyways, so they bounced. And I never told you the background. Our whole like long-term play, because it had bathrooms on every single floor, and it was a huge floor pan on each floor. We were going to do 3 units, 3 2 bedrooms, actually probably even 3 3 bedrooms. Like it was because it's a big footprint. The zoning actually allowed it. Like everything was good. We just obviously had to put together the capital. We didn't really know what we were doing, so it was kind of a big undertaking. But anyway, so those guys moved out, and then I went to go re-rent it, put it up, did showings, but the house was rough. It had been beat even harder by the new tenants that we had. So I got a few showings, but everyone just kind of dwindled off. I'd get them the applications. I'd be following up and calling them like, hey, you interested? And they're like, maybe, basically just didn't want to say no. Then anyways, finally we get this response from a family. And they come out and there's 3 kids, 2 adults, and then another fellow who was like an uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole house is empty at this point.
And you're
they
like, sign here.
pretty much. And they came in and they were all like hot and horny for it. Like they came in, they're like, oh, this is perfect because the family's going to live upstairs. The uncle's going to live in the basement. We'll pay the utilities. We'll just take the whole house. And they're willing to pay, I think, $1,800 for the whole house. And I was like, you know what? If you're paying utilities, done. Because we were averaging about $800 a month once we boiled in all the utilities.
Okay.
So I was like, it's pretty much the same thing, less management, et cetera, et cetera. So and they came. The guy said, "Oh, I'm handy. I'm gonna fix."
And you think, oh, I don't have to worry about the dynamic of like downstairs not liking upstairs because they're,
Driveway, no
Yeah.
messing around with the driveway and who's clearing what and whatever. They said they're gonna do all this work to the house.
I feel like this isn't going to end well, and I love it.
Oh
Let's hear
yeah,
it.
they were. They made me feel so good. They're like, "Oh yeah, we got this. We'll give you post-date checks. Everything's great." They did an application, but I was just so tired of going through the process. And I was living in Dartmouth, I think, or somewhere else. So every time I was driving all the way across down to Halifax to do these stupid showings, which half the people don't show up for.
Yeah.
So I was basically, yep, all right, cool. Sign here. Give me the deposit check. Give me the rent checks. Let's do this thing. So did that, and then like, can we move in early? Yeah, no worries. Give me the checks. I'll give you the keys. So what they did, they gave me the checks, gave them the keys. They moved in pretty much right away, within like a week or two, which right off the hop is like a bad sign.
Yeah. Why are these people like? Why do they have no home?
Yeah, like
Right.
within like 5 days, they're like,
Yeah.
all right, we're coming in. I was like, well, okay, this is
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. What are you skipping out on to get here? Like, why are you so transient? Right. And it's there could be a perfectly logical explanation,
Yeah.
but anytime someone's like, so I need a place like in the next couple weeks, like, why? But
This market, it's starting to be more realistic. Like people's like, my lease is coming to an end, and this market's so psycho that I'm struggling to find a place.
yeah, no, that's a good point. And some people are just really proactive, and they realize when they're on a month-to-month lease, they take a good opportunity when it comes along.
Yeah.
And some people, I've even had folks be like, well, I'll happily carry the 2 units for 1 month while I move over and so on and so forth.
I want the layover.
But this is, you're,
I'm leading up to a big
I
one
know,
here.
it's quite a yarn.
So this
you're
house has
weaving.
now been burnt down. No, anyways, they move in, whatever, cool. Deposit the safety deposit the first check, all is well. They sent me a few things that they needed done, whatever, got them done. First month rolls over. I waited like 3 days to deposit the rent check. Go to deposit. I get, NSF, I get it bounce.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, cool. Like, I guess that happens, whatever. Like, this is their first month in there. They're just getting used to it. So I go back. They give me a new check because I guess they changed checkbooks, they said, whatever. They're all like, oh my God, so sorry. Come in. Cut me a bunch of new checks. Go and deposit that one again. Bounce. Then at this point, I'm like, yo, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Start calling them. Nothing.
Yeah.
Texting, and then like I would text, and then after 2 weeks I get a response. Oh hey, so sorry. Finally I get an e-transfer for like $500, like just a random one out of nowhere. So that put me off for another 2 weeks. Then I'm on them, banging on the door. I can see them walking around in the house because you can see through the glass door. It's like a stained glass door. I can see them through the stained glass walking around. Nobody's coming to the door. Right? They're ignoring me. There's no one's coming to the door.
Also, how young are you at this time? I guess it's not this long ago. This is a few-
21?
Yeah.
Like 20 range. So, but like, so the other thing, the guy who's renting it, the main dad, he's a bouncer. So he's a pretty big dude. Okay, just to like double down here, that both of the guys that are living in this house are big bouncer guys. Like and I'm not a huge guy. So I was like a little intimidating. And they're like,
Did you wear an extra tight T-shirt that day?
and I was wearing an extra small.
Okay.
And it didn't help my case. I'll tell you right now.
No, man, this is a real thing.
So this is what happens. And anyway, so they're bouncing on it. And it's just, we're going back. My other partners are coming. They're banging on the door. One of my partners knows what bar he works at. He goes to the bar and confronts them right there in front of the bar. He's a little more bold than I am. Anyways, the guy's, oh, yeah, I'll do it. I'll pay up. He never ends up paying. We deliver the Form K, I think it was, to get them evicted. And at that point, I literally stood there at the door to give him the Form K. I was like, I will not leave. And I just stood there and knocked for like half an hour, just holding the thing. And finally, I see him coming down the staircase, and I'm like, there we go. And he comes out, and honestly, nice enough guy. Like, I was a little nervous when he came out. I was like, am I about to get shot or stabbed or something like this? I hand the Form K, and he goes, yeah, we're going to leave. And I was like, okay, good enough. He dragged it out for another, I think, 3 weeks. And then one day I drove by, there was no lights on one night, and so I just went in. Icing on the cake is, so they finally left. They left the house a mess, going around. We had bought these beautiful red LG stackable laundry appliances. Open up the laundry room. Guess who no longer owns a beautiful set of red LG laundry appliances?
Yeah. Well, you know where those LGs were?
What?
The down payment for their next place. 100%, right?
I didn't think of
so,
that.
yeah. This happens as soon as they know the writing is on the wall and they pass the threshold. every dollar now they need to pay the next landlord, right? And if they were short, they would sell, your laundry. But yeah, like once you'd gone over that tipping point, they weren't going to pay because that month needed to be the first month somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, jeepers. So and the whole time you're like, yeah, passive income.
Yeah. I was like,
Building wealth.
I was still when I was hanging out with my friends, I'm like, yeah, I own a rental property.
Yeah.
It's a
no big
2-unit.
deal.
It's pretty sick. I have to pay into it every month.
They don't answer the door when I knock, but
They don't pay rent or anything like that, but I own the property.
So is this what kind of triggered the sale, kind of, or?
Yeah, then one of the partners went away. He moved away all the way to the other side of the country. Another one wanted to do his own thing. At that point, we're like, okay, we're going to turn into a 3-unit. But it was to turn into a 3-unit was going to cost us $300,000.
The juice would not have been worth the squeeze on that.
Well, and at that time, to spend $300,000 on a place for $275,000, so we're into it for $600,000. It didn't seem that exciting because the nearest triplex fully renovated
would not have been. Yeah.
Yeah, it sold for like $685,000. Today, a brand new triplex on there would appraise for $1 million.
You also were 20-something at the time. It would have taken you, best case scenario, 6 months to do that work. You'd have no rental income. Like it would have been a disaster.
Yeah, it would have been hard on the head. It would have been super stressful. And to be honest, at that point, I had gone out and bought more on my own. So I was rolling on my own. So I was like, you know what? To take out this whatever I had in there, 30, 40 grand. I was like, I'd be happy to take this and put this towards my own projects. So that's what we did. We listed it up. The market was actually pretty good too. So we did go multiple offer because we listed low.
What did it sell for?
$295, but there was no agent because I double-ended it.
Oh, yeah, you were the listing agent.
And
Right.
Yes, and I had an agreement with my partnership that we're going to share the commission.
Gotcha.
So there was actually no commission cost on that. So for us, it's the equivalent of kind of like doing it more like 305 range. But yeah, it was an interesting one for sure. I'm going to tell you one more thing before I'm done with this place. The sale, this is an interesting thing that we have now with this market and just kind of how this world is going. Mm-hmm. The way this sale worked, I listed this on like a Friday night. I listed it. I hit the button at the office at like 4:59. I got Brenda to hit it, and we walked out. 5:15, 5:30, phone's ringing. Guys like, 6983 Shabakdo, like, can I see it tonight? Like, I want to go see it right now. Like, I'm in the area. Can I come see it? I'm like, whoa, man. I had just driven over to my aunt's place for like a family dinner. I was sitting down, and I'm like, huh. But I'm a new agent, so I'm like, oh, frig, maybe I should.
You're going.
Yeah, should I go? So anyways, here we go. Zip over. This fellow, he has just driven in from Ontario or something like that. And just a young guy, just like jeans and a t-shirt. We walk through the whole place, and like, I'm embarrassed walking through because the place is a mess. And he goes,
like, who's the owner of this place?
Oh yeah, and the roof's leaking, by the way, too. So like, there's like shit coming through the roof. Yeah. Who's the owner of this stuff? And he goes, we finish it. He looks at me, and goes, I'll take it. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like I'll buy it like right now, no conditions. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll take it right now. And I was like,
let's do it.
Okay, let's do up a contract. But then within like 3 hours, I had like 10 or 15 showing requests, and I was like, you know what? Maybe we don't sell this thing for asking or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we try and stir it up. So anyways, we dragged it out for another, I think, 24 or 48 hours, got in 2 or 3 more offers. This fellow was still there, and he ended up still being the best offer.
What's he done with it?
Well, so
let's get that guy on the show.
He still texts me once in a while.
Yeah, nice.
So he didn't end up buying it. This is the weird part.
Oh.
Like the day before closing, he goes, "Hey, I need an amendment," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" Say, "I need to change the name of the owner or the buyer." And I just get this license sent to me of a guy from BC. And I don't want to necessarily say an ethnicity, but he's from Vancouver, so you can probably put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, I wonder if the guy flipped it.
Yeah, and he just
the guy, he kneeled you. He kneeled Neal.
Yeah, he kneeled. He probably optioned it off.
Yeah.
And
good for him.
Yeah, on closing it, and he just off he went, and it was just like nothing. And they paid cash, and everything came in, and I was like, you know what? Honestly, I don't really care. Like, I was like,
why would you? I'm kind of curious now as to.
And he hits me up all the time. He goes, "You got anything? You got anything? Do you have anything? Do you have anything?" And I'm like,
cool.
And he wants to buy everywhere, and he just zips around. I think puts places under contract, and he's flipping them to people all over the place. Mm-hmm. And it sat empty. I drove past all the time, and it sat empty for almost a year and a half, 2 years. After I sold it, nobody mowed the lawn. It was just sitting there. No one.
This is now getting like from interesting into suspicious, Neal. You realize that, right?
I'm not a part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Empty for a year and a half. Jeepers.
Literally, probably more than that. And only recently did I drive by one day and I saw lights on and a car in the driveway. And I was like, and they've done no work to it. Like, it's still like that same yellow mixed with gray.
Man, okay, I'm gonna have to do a drive-by.
Do a drive-by
what's
now.
going on.
Watch me like fully renovated triplex.
Yeah, crazy. Well,
So
that's an interesting story, Neal. I'm glad
that's
we
my
got to go on
first
that.
rental.
Okay.
It was hard on the head.
Yeah, that sounds
I did it.
difficult. I think it's good to give people that realistic story.
It was not passive.
That's not passive income. Oh man.
Lost friendships and some money.
Yeah, solid. And then started a podcast. But it's important to know that these things do happen. I think, there's are likely tons of things that you would have done differently in hindsight.
Yeah.
But that is how you learn. And the tricky thing, I tell people this all the time, is the hardest ones are like getting those first 5.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, and I don't know what your partners did, a lot of them, they go through that experience and they're like, never again.
Yeah.
Right? And, maybe one goes well, then you get a second and maybe get a third. And then all of a sudden things start not going well, like, because houses age. Things are on a 5 or 10 or 15 or 25 year maintenance cycle.
Yeah.
Right? And they start busting and, it's easy to pull that chute. And what happened is, what was it, 4 years in, you guys pulled the chute? 5?
3 years.
3 years in, you pulled the chute, right?
Yeah.
And you obviously took enough from it and persevered and bought more, but other people would throw in the towel. They'd be like, you know what? I tried it. It wasn't for me. And they'll talk about how shitty it is to be a landlord and all that. And they won't be lying, right? They'll have had that experience and like, man, there's all kinds of reasons in there to not do this.
The other two, one has never bought. He just went and bought a condo for himself. The other one just bought his first rental a week ago.
Who was his agent?
Not me.
Not. Oh, that's the answer I was hoping for.
Oh, yeah.
I was hoping that.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, so you took that and then you parted with it, ways with it to do something else.
Yeah.
I kind of took a similar model, but what I'm going to talk about is how I went from things like this and knock on wood, or well, in hindsight, I'm very fortunate that I didn't have an experience like that at all. But then how I took that and I scaled up because, as I mentioned in a previous episode, my wife and I, we bought a duplex. We lived in one. We rented the other. And it went surprisingly well. The units were in okay shape. The tenants were fine.
You don't know what it means to be a landlord.
I know. I haven't been through the grind. Things came up, but nothing that we couldn't handle. And then after we bought the first duplex, then it's kind of a funny story, but I bought a second duplex, came into some cash, and immediately did what I genuinely felt was the best thing, which was bought another duplex.
Yeah.
And that second one needed a little bit more work. One unit was completely renovated. One was a little rough. So I did a bit more work on the second one.
Yeah.
It went well. Then bought a single family home. And it was really rough. So I learned a lot doing through that. Literally took it to the studs and did that over. And by that point in time, my first one had appreciated a little bit.
Was that the house that you live in or no?
No, that was our first single family home.
Okay.
And then I'd finished that project, and I bought, what did I buy next? I bought another duplex, which needed even more renovation still.
Yeah.
It was really dumpy. So now I'm at 3 duplexes and a single family home.
What's the pace like here?
One a year,
One a
right?
year,
Like
right?
this was
That's
my
what-
goal,
okay,
one a
yep.
year. Actually, when I bought the single family home, it took about 18 months, so I fell behind my schedule. But then the next year, I bought both a single family home over in Halifax and a duplex in Dartmouth, so that over the course of the 5 years, I had accumulated these 5 properties. And always the model was the same. I bought kind of a little bit downtrodden properties and, improved them. And I started with something manageable, like we did some new windows, some siding, some paint, and open up the pass-through to make it more open concept, like the basic first renovation people do.
Yep.
The next one, I took one unit, pretty significantly renovated and redid bathroom. Third one was a total gut job. Fourth one was a total gut job. And then the fifth one ended up being kind of easy because I'd been through those others. But when I got to 5 of them, and I was now having to put 20% down on things, like which you did because you were with partners. But for me, I'd gotten away with 5% down because I was moving between these properties.
Yep.
I now was like, man, the fifth one, I had to put $80,000 down.
Serious.
Which I was like, this is every dollar to my name.
Yeah.
And, I did it and I got through it. And I was like, well, that doesn't quite make sense to me. If I'm going to start putting down $100,000 and more on properties, because then you also had to renovate it, I want to get something bigger.
Yeah.
But this is actually very similar to with a house that I live in now, where I had this affinity for a property from a distance for years. It's like one day I would love to buy that house. So on Portland Street, there was this really ugly mid-century cube of a building that was so ugly and nondescript that you wouldn't even know it was there. Like you just drive by it, and I drove by it many times, and I wouldn't even know it's there. This is the after picture here, but like it was really, like it was brown. It backs onto a lake, and yet not a single window faces the lake. Oh, here it is before. That's actually a nice. It looks okay there.
Yeah.
But
like talking a bunch of shit.
You would drive by this. Look at this place, though.
Yeah, I know. It's a box. It's an actual box.
It looks like a storage facility or like a morgue or something like that. Of course, like there is a lake back there. And of course, there's no windows facing the lake. That would make too much sense.
Yeah.
But brutalist mid-century architecture. Oh, there it is, getting painted. So I was by this property so many times, and I thought that building is so ugly that it's almost cool. And as mid-century modern architecture started to come back in,
go past it.
I could sort of envision the finished product, and I'm like, man, I would love to get my hands on that property one day.
Yeah.
I even went into the foyer to like look around and be like, what's this place like? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's as disgusting as I expected. Yeah, look at that. That's really cool. I did not know that this was a thing. I could go back and time scroll like that.
Yeah.
So I always wanted this property, and I was like, man, if I could ever scale up and get something like that,
yeah,
I would love the project of it. And pure coincidence, an agent in our office, it's like, I've got a listing coming up. It's a 12-unit building on Portland Street. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, Portland Street's a long street, but I know that one's a 12-unit. And the next multi-unit I can think of is up on really what you'd call Cole Harbor Road.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any 12 units in downtown Portland. There's like an 8 and a 9 stuff. I'm like, I wonder if it's the one. And it was. So I contacted her immediately. And the history of this building, and this is interesting because it touches on something, we've spoken about. It was owned by Dartmouth Non-for-Profit Housing. So it was a nonprofit organization that still to this day provides housing for people. And this was one of their rare developments that they did in the 60s. I think they built it in, 58 or 66, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So they came up with this beautiful design. And
what's the unit layout like?
4 units per floor, all mirror images, one another, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath.
Okay.
Really solid layout. It's walk up, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
But I had 5 properties at this point, and while I had pulled some equity out of them, I hadn't really tapped them all out en masse. And I typically paid about $200,000 for them, added purchase plus improvements to fix them up. And so really simply put, they were all worth about $350,000, and I maybe owed on them around like $200,000, right after some time had passed.
Mm-hmm.
So I had, roughly speaking, and this is going to be really, not great math on this. When I refinanced them all, I just kind of went back and I said, blanket these 5. I'm going to refinance every dollar out of them, and probably pulled roughly, $40,000 from each property.
Yeah.
But I had 5 of them.
Yeah.
Right? $40,000 is not going to change your life at any point in time. But in taking all 5 of those, $200,000, and I bought this beauty. And she was rough. They're a great organization, and they did a good job with it. Like, you can see the windows were vinyl. Like, it was not neglected, but it was also far from updated. And I went in there, and it was, a very diverse group of people there, and I had to level with them. Like, this was a big change for me. This was the first time that I had to tell tenants the building is going to be renovated. Your leases are not going to be renewed. You're moving out.
Yeah.
And what I did, and this is still kind of the model I take today, is I tell people, listen, you have a lease. You have your right to stay here. I will honor your lease, but I would rather upset you now than disappoint you later. So I'm going to tell you the truth. That is that you're not going to be renewed here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This unit is going to be renovated and put back on the market. And then I also said, by the way, the first 3 people who decide to leave are getting $1,500, and their full security deposit back. I can't guarantee that for everyone because I can only renovate so many units at a time. But just being upright, and telling you guys all that this is coming down the pipeline. Your lease situation. You know what options are out there for you. I want to work with you. I'll honor your lease, and I'll pay you this amount to help you move and so on and so forth. So
I'm going to pause real quick.
Yeah.
We got a no purchase price.
I think it was $650,000. Yeah. It was a good deal. Yeah, it was great deal.
54 grand a door.
Man, your math is really good. Your math is pretty good.
Tell me again.
Yeah. Well, it was a different time also.
Yeah,
remember that.
I get that, yeah.
And the reality is I still had to put 35% down because the numbers were so horrendous. Like their model was literally to put the smaller, have rents as low as possible. Like that is the,
that makes sense. Yeah.
So if someone could only afford $495, that was their rent.
Yeah.
So I still had to put 35% down on this property, but it's $650,000 wasn't that crazy. I also had to wait a year. And the reason I had to wait a year is in the phase 1 environmental. So when you start getting into commercial financing, you often, but not always, have to do environmental assessments, and they're not cheap. Like a phase 1, I think now is about $2,500, depending on who you have do it. And a phase 1 is we research, we look around, really high level. Is there cause here to do further research? So in this case, if you know this area, it's like, okay, that used to be a gas station, that used to be a gas station, that used to be a gas station. Oh, and also this used to have underground oil tanks.
Yeah.
And they still had the receipt from 1991 of when they had the underground oil tanks removed, right? Which is good. They're very organized and, a great seller in that respect. But of course, the phase 1 came back and said, we're going to need a phase 2. And the phase 2 is when they actually take samples and see, okay, is there petroleum particulates or whatever it is there? And then phase 2 recommended a phase 3, which is we're going to study it for 12 months. And at the end of the 12 months, we'll decide, is it moving? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? And of course, it's getting better because nature heals itself. But also, every time they take a sample, they flush the system, kind of like fracking, and they suck it all up, and then they test it. So every time, they're kind of like cleaning it a little bit. And ironically, there's no finished living space on the main floor. So you have a float of your residential. So there's no reason this would have any environmental impact whatsoever. But for a year, we had to do it.
I want to pause you. When you say that you're flushing the system, what are you saying?
So when they do these boreholes for testing for oil,
yeah,
right? They say, okay, we think the oil might be moving in this direction, that direction. They put little boreholes. And in order to go down and sample what's in there, they essentially flush it.
Yep.
And take it back up. But in doing that, they're inherently kind of cleaning it at the same time. And I argued with my lender for a few things. One, usually under $1 million on a loan, you can indemnify and don't have to do an environmental. So I kind of preemptively did an environmental phase 1, which maybe I could have gotten away without doing. And two, because the residential is actually separated by a story from the ground, there's no underground basement here. There's nothing below grade.
Yeah.
I was like, why do I even need to be that concerned with what's in the ground? But they wouldn't let me do it. They wouldn't give financing until it was done. So it took 12 months before I got the keys to that place.
Wow.
And fortunately, the seller hung on because in the agreement I wrote, the phase 1's on me, phase 2 and any other phases are on you guys. So they floated the phase 2 and 3 to the tune of about $25,000 and 12 months before I got it.
They're paying for it?
They paid for it. Yeah, I think I ended up releasing the deposit to them as an advance to pay it because I put a $50,000 deposit and said you can take it out of that money if you don't have it in your float. So I worked with them and they were great to deal with. And so I got the keys. I started having these difficult conversations with the tenants. Some of them went really well and they understood and because the organization is such they're not a big organization, but they had other units. Some of their clientele were very proactive about getting placed in other units.
Yeah.
And some of them actually remained with me. So 2 of the tenants stayed on with me, and I worked with them on the rents. One lady, she stayed on at a lower rent, but then cleaned the building. Another gentleman who had been in that building since effectively the day it opened, right? He's been there probably 40-odd years. He's still with me now. Wow. He, does some cleaning. He shovels the walkway, salts, all these sort of things. But the rest didn't, right? 12 units.
Yeah.
By the time I took possession, a couple of them had already left, probably knowing the writing was on the wall. Everyone else I told, like, listen, this is the situation. I'm going to honor your lease. I'll work with you. But that said, this is, I'm going to be direct with you. I'm going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But here's what I can do for you. And a number of them took me out on the $1,500. And I'll tell you, like, this was when I was early in, like, man, it hurt to write them a $1,500 check before then having to renovate.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this was money, and some of them took it really poorly. Threatened to blow up my car.
It's personal because it's their home. At the end of the day, it's their home.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
And my whole thing is, I'm always going to treat you with respect, and you're going to treat me with respect, period. Yeah. I had this the other day with a walkthrough for some clients on a 4-unit. We walked through. The guy was not happy, and he was all, giving his attitude. I'm like, no, I'm going to stop you there. Like, I'm not being rude to you. You're not going to be rude to me. We can disagree on some things, but we're not going to be rude to each other. And it was a battle, but got it turned over, man. 12 units. And you want to talk about learning a lot? Whew. Like, I had to fire my first tradespeople, like, off this place. Yep. Someone said they could do this scope of work. They just didn't have the wherewithal, the history, the experience. They couldn't do it, you know? And then I learned who I could trust to do that work. And those people are with me to this day. Like, my buddy Brian, man, bailed me out. Like, because he has a crew and he saved my butt. Josh, who does all my contracting now, when I fired the guy there who said he could do everything, Josh came in and we got everything done. And this is what it looks like now. So I'm super proud of this building, man. I love this building.
I think you did great. Like, I'm going to toot your horn. Great choice of style, color. Like, you worked with what you said. Basically, it's a box.
She's a box, man.
She's a box, and I honestly think you did a great job. And that was actually before I ever knew you. And I remember driving past and being like, damn.
It's not bad. It's also, cool. Like, I put some color in there. Like, there's like this really cool graffiti along the wall here. A buddy of mine's a graffiti artist, so he did it all there. And underneath the covered parking, there's all this, like, Dartmouth-inspired graffiti mural underneath. Man, I love that building. Yeah. And it's really interesting. It was the same as my house. Like, I saw it. I'm like, man, if I could ever get that place. But the way I did it is I started, and to this day, I still describe these small-scale multis, these ones, these twos. I tell them, like, people, those are your piggy banks.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you pay down the equity. They're not going to make you rich. They're going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
But they're your piggy banks to one day, if you can grit it out and get through 5 of them, then you can scale up to something like this that actually, makes you money and, can kind of really get the ball rolling. But it was hard. It took a long time to renovate. And I think, initially I only had $90,000 to renovate it. Yeah. And then I had to go back and be like, well, it's partially done, so it's worth a lot more now. I need $135,000 to finish the renovation. And that's how I did it. I kind of did these top-up loans as I went. And it took a while, and there she is. 357 Portland.
I think you did well. It looks a lot nicer than my place.
Yeah. My after picture is a little better than yours, but no, but we intentionally set these up as, like, I didn't show my duplexes, and you know what I mean. Like,
exactly. I now hearing your story about this, I'd love to tell you my story of my 11 unit, because that's my first, I would say, real true multi.
Yeah.
And I think people would love to hear that one, because I didn't put a dime in. I got cash back on closing, and it's been a beautiful building ever since. And it actually leveraged, like, it rocket launched me from, like, I had 5 units going into that.
Yeah.
And within a year and a half buying that now, I'm hopefully going to be closing on my 85th unit or something like that.
Yeah. I want to hear this story.
That's an interesting story. I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like...
Yeah, that's going to be a story for another day. Yeah. That's a good teaser. Leave the people wanting more.
Imagine getting cash back on buying a multi.
Yeah. That's also the good old days. That's hard to do.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't advertise that too much.
while winking suggestively at the camera. It's like Exhibit A, like in the future trial.
But I think one thing with this one is, again, this is like a huge reflection of how the market's changed. You, first of all, getting them to basically give it to you without going to market.
Yep.
Any agent now would be like, go pound sand. I'm taking this thing to market.
Yep.
Whether they know you or not. The second thing being their willingness to extend and cover enviros. They're a good one, and you can get sellers to do that sometimes. But now it's getting more and more where the sellers like, I'm not doing anything.
Oh, 100%.
I got this guy and this girl, and all these people that want to buy, and they're willing to pay with no conditions and on and on and on and on.
Because one way to not have to do environmental is to pay cash, right? Like, but if you're going through a conventional mortgage and it's over $1 million, especially like the loan is over $1 million, you're doing environmental. Right?
Yeah,
and it opens a can of worms, man.
And in general, if I've learned anything, honestly, as you start doing the bigger ones, always do an enviro in advance if you can. Just because when it comes time to do your financing later down the road, if it's going to be over $1 million, you're going to involve CMHC. They're going to want to see it.
Yeah, they're going to need it.
So you don't want to get into it. And a lot of these buildings, I mean, especially here, I don't know what it's like everywhere else, but they do. There was a lot of underground oil tanks.
Oh, totally.
And so
decommissioned gas stations, like you don't even know where the oil comes from. You're like, is this my oil? Is that their oil? You don't know. Like it's someone's oil.
That's I don't know if it's as big in other. It must be. Like we have such a huge oil-based heating. Like
yeah, we have a lot of oil here. Other places are like natural gas and things like that.
Yeah, so it might be more relevant here. But I think that's something that I would say in on average for buying, like you said, for duplexes, triplexes, any of those kind of things, I wouldn't really be concerned about.
Like, they don't ask and
you don't need to
get
tell.
into it. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, for these, I would definitely recommend before the purchase making that move, because when it comes time to refinance, it would be a very sad time if you find out like, oh, you got to spend $400K to get the $300K out.
Yeah, and realistically, I asked at the time, I was like, well, what if this goes bad? Like, what is the high end cost? And it was only going to be $80,000, but at that point, that was 25% of the. No, it was like 10% of the purchase price, 15% of the purchase price.
15% purchase. Yeah.
And more money than I had, and it would have killed the deal.
Yeah.
So it's very fortunate that it worked out, but it was touch and go. I was like, man, what if this doesn't come back approved, or a closed site?
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's deemed a closed site, which is not to say it's a clean site, but it's that the Department of Environmental has been satisfied by the third-party investigation, saying this is not an ongoing issue of concern, or it's not a worsening issue. Yeah. So,
did you add windows on the water side?
No, it wasn't in the budget. No.
Did you see how he threw out a chirp there? That there's no windows on the water side. Go ahead and renovate the whole building.
Well, it's actually funny if it's hard to explain without seeing the floor plan, but all there is on the back of the building is a staircase.
Bring it up, Tanner. Don't let him lie to us.
Yeah,
you tried to lie as to how terrible the building was, and then we saw how nice it was.
There's a lake behind it. You can't get back there. There's no.
All he did was paint the place.
Oh, here we go. Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now.
All he did was paint the place and increase the rents. Let's make him.
This is actually really cool.
Wow, look at the graffiti. That actually looks super cool.
Can you go around to the other side? So this is amazing.
I didn't even know you could do this. This is insane,
bro. Technology. No, it's a different product, right? So this is actually like a gray vinyl product. Like, is Tanner mic'd up?
Yeah.
Cut Tanner's feed.
Yeah.
This side, it's perfectly fine vinyl product. It just had corrugated metal on the front and back. But so on this back side, it's a staircase, which you wouldn't pay money for like a glass wall for a staircase for no reason.
Yeah.
And then there's bathrooms, and then the one wall in the bedroom where you'd put a bed, right? So you're not going to put a window there. I looked into it, man. I was like, oh man, do I put a window here? There's really no. There's
it would only benefit a few units as well, realistically.
Yeah, that's it too. But actually, this is kind of cool here. You can see the other stuff that I own in the area, so I'm pretty pot committed to this location. This pit over here.
Didn't just double down; you quadrupled down.
Yeah, I own that corner and you can see like a building was there that's been removed, and then the car lot over there, I own that as well. So this is kind of when I mentioned that I'm working with some land and a couple doors down, like that. Those two houses that are there, right? Yeah, those are both gone because I own that area in there and some of these trees in the back. Kind of
up to that pathway.
And behind the pathway.
Past the pathway, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
All that, actually, yeah.
Yeah, now a lot of that's not really developable, but my approval for the 60 unit is right where you kind of see that thing on the left there, like that little truck in the parking lot there or whatever in the driveway. Yeah. That's a great area, and yeah.
You have quadrupled down, and I'll give you respect because now it's going to be it's transformed.
Oh yeah, I live like almost around here too, right? So I've got a vested interest in this neighborhood. This is going to be my local watering hole when I can get a bar in there and maybe some tacos and tequila or something. But
you can talk about the days that you painted only two sides of your four-sided building.
Whatever. Okay, yeah, I guess that's enough probably for today. But
I think so.
I think that's a really good. I know we alluded to these or we touched on these, like, oh, what did you do? Kind of. But here, people actually get to see this is what you did for your first thing, and it's important to hear that it didn't go great.
Yeah.
That's part of it. And this was not roses and sunshine, and this wasn't like I skipped steps to get here. I just went through those same battles you did.
Yeah.
And then by the time I hit 5, I refinanced them. I was fortunate enough to find something like this, and it sort of set me up a little bit now to do these other things. And, the land across the street was all paid for from the equity of that building a couple of years later.
It sets the wheels in motion.
Yeah.
You start with a bunch of small ones, put them together, buy a bigger one, and then you're in that game. And that's pretty much, these would be small ones for some of the big developers in town.
Yeah, and
They'd be like, oh, you buy 5
some guys
12s.
like, oh, that's cute.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
you do the same thing. You put it all together, and then you make your first big move from there. But yeah, no, like you said, it's an interesting one to hear because my experience turned off out of 3 of us, it turned off 2 of us.
Yeah.
Right.
If everyone was doing it, it wouldn't be doable. It's not for everyone.
It's not all roses.
Yeah. I think that this has given us a great idea for a future show, which is like horror stories.
Oh yeah.
We got to get into the horror stories, like worst tenant, worst move out, all these things.
Maybe I'll save it, but
we got to save it, man. We're wrapping up.
We got something. I got something to put here. I'll ask you if you think it's too far, but
no.
Anyway, so like, comment, subscribe. We're gonna give away one of these stacks of cash. They could be real. They could be fake.
One of the other things, like I started talking about my kid who watched this YouTube video, and he watches all this weird stuff on YouTube. So this is what I picked up. This is my research I was doing.
Okay.
Go ahead and smash the like button and click subscribe. There you go.
Thanks for watching.